Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. And Renee and I are excited to be here with you. And we thought we would talk today about creating some recruiting expectations and consistency, maybe how to get aligned about what we're doing in our recruiting processes and make sure we're setting up recruiters to be successful, and that we're managing expectations out in the firm, with the partner group for sure, any operations or admin team that are supporting the process, and anybody else that's involved in the recruiting process, just so that we are unified and have a consistent approach to help us ensure success with the investments that we're making in our recruiting strategies. Renee, is there anything else you want to add as I set that up for our discussion today?
Well, Tamera, earlier in the year, we looked at Josh Berson's HR predictions for 2023, and one of them was investments are going to be happening in recruiting, and we're going to be hiring more recruiters and improving our recruiting engine. And I feel like I'm seeing that. I'm seeing a lot of firms hire recruiters. And so it feels like a timely topic to make sure those people are set up for success. So if your firm isn't yet investing in recruiting, we would say, why not? And we've probably talked about that on the huddle before, but just for a little bit of level setting, probably firms of every size should have a person who is dedicated to recruiting. If you're a smaller firm, it's going to be part-time, part of someone's job. If you're a larger firm, and I don't know where, maybe if you're getting to 80, 90, even 65, you may be investing in a full-time recruiter, because filling that talent pipeline is so critical. And so it's earlier than we used to think. It used to be one HR person up to over 100. I don't know that really, in a market where it's all about talent, we need more HR professionals, and we probably need to divvy up and not have just one person get to recruiting whenever they have a second, which, as you and I both know, doesn't happen. It's like a great idea. So yes. That's the only other thing I would say before we dive in.
Well, since you went there about the expectations of a recruiter, I'm just going to say a couple things, since we're talking about, let's get consistent about what our expectations are for recruiters and for these roles. One of the things that we talk about is there is a difference in expectation, in skill set, in activities of an experienced hire recruiter, which is more of a sales job, and on-campus recruiting. Now, sometimes as you're starting, they're doing both, but you will start to see the person is going to gravitate towards one or the other based on their skill sets, their interests, their experience, what they see. Not necessarily so much what you might need in the firm. And so we just want to acknowledge that we need to get really clear about what those expectations are. And they really are two different kinds of functions and roles. And so as you build your recruiting function, you'll start to split them out, and you'll want to have those expectations set and the skill set defined for what those are. And we often see that we're not as specific about what that is as we could be. And that could create maybe some disappointment or churn as we're trying to figure out a recruiting position. So I'll start there with managing expectations and getting consistent about, what we're looking for in a recruiter, as we look at the position, what kind of, person is it we're looking for, and that they are they're distinct. They're two different, positions. So probably pretty quickly, you'll start to see them split off, or you'll see maybe a part-time person start to take over all the coordination of the on-campus in recruiting if I've got a really good experienced hire, recruiter that's out there. So that's one place to start.
Totally. Yes. Well, and we thought we might want to start, Tamera, on process-related issues first here, because start at the beginning. Recruiters are going out there and talking to candidates and drumming up a lot of interest, hopefully. And so what are the expectations of that candidate pool? And how do we get in sync with that, so that that recruiter's working pretty hard out there? And then if we have a whole lot of stop and start and not clarity over how quickly we're going to make offers, how quickly we're going to generate offer letters, we could have some frustrations with the recruiter not being able to deliver, or having candidates slip through their fingers. And the market's moving really, really fast. So do you have any thoughts on that, on what to recommend?
Well, I'm going to kind of back up and then we'll talk about the offer letter. First, who's included in the interviews? What is our recruiting process? Who owns our, we have a roles grid, and maybe Caroline, we could share it on recruiting. Who owns doing the background checks, the reference checks, who's going to be involved in the interviews. We have to do that here at Convergence Coaching and say, we're going to have a lead that's going to do the screening, the initial screening, which we do on a Teams video, by the way. We do a phone screen and then we do a Teams screen. Who owns doing that? And then when do we bring in the other resources? And we don't want to have it be too prolonged of a process. And so that's where Renee you were just headed, right? Is I need to make it efficient, but I also need to know, who's going to be in there and what are we each screening for? Am I screening for culture? Is Renee screening for technical, qualifications? How are we assessing that? What are the, we have a recruiting template, a screening template that we ask questions and we document that and share it so we can compare apples to apples with candidates. And we also have a, grid to line them up and say, here's the things they have and rate them on it so that we can look at it and do some analytics. You do always have to trust your gut. So if their gut is off, we need to listen to that. That's where we make the biggest mistake in hires. But if we can have that defined, that process can feel very smooth, both internally to our team members, but, externally to the candidates. And then we can also be more efficient in being ready to deliver an offer letter. And sometimes we take too long, too many discussions, too many threads, and we lose people. And, Renee, I think you're right. In this market, we cannot risk that. We've got to be ready to, make offers, interns, or, on-campus recruiting. When we're doing on-campus recruiting, we need to be prepared for those top candidates. We got to be prepared to give them, offer letters almost same day. But, for sure, within a couple of days, of seeing them. And if we have that process defined up front and the way we're going to analyze it and compare people, the easier it is to feel confident in giving those offers.
Yes, love it, Tamera. Well, in your whole discussion of backing us up, I want to back us up again, too, because as you were talking about rules grids, I was thinking we've been revamping our case studies, our ownership case studies, which is an exercise we do with people in our various programs around where ownership falls off or doesn't work, or we have problems.
We don't have clarity.
Yes. Well, and do you remember one of the examples that we had was around recruiting? And it was in particular like a practice leader or someone responsible for a team who was trying to do some hiring with the recruiting team. And that person, let's just pretend for a second it's the client accounting leader, that they're looking for 3 or 4 people and the candidates in their mind haven't really fit. And so it was unclear who needed to dive in and fix that problem. And so, that could also be some of the sync that is an issue for recruiters, that they are bringing people to the table and it's not working. And you may not be getting the information that you need from the client service side. You may have to really dig in with them to say, this is what we talked about, and this is what I'm out there looking for, but it seems like it didn't fit. Help me understand. You might have to really push back so that you're not just continuing churning that wheel that's not really bringing up what you need for the candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the other piece, we got to be clear about is, okay, we make the offer letter, then what? And I know a lot of firms have been really revamping their onboarding process, especially in our hybrid environment, and making sure the experience is the same no matter where I am, no matter if we have multiple offices, if I have somebody that's completely remote and I'm here in Minnesota and our office is in Texas, that we have a similar experience for those candidates and for those making the offer letter, any paperwork we need to do, sending them some kind of welcome package with, firm swag, inviting them to events, again, who owns all those things and what are those considerations to make sure that we are creating a great first impression, great experience, when they come on board. And then obviously the first week and, all of those things and having lunch. And if we're remote, we do a remote lunch. We put it on people's calendars and we're like, we just, hired Brianna. She was our last hire. And we're like, whoever can come, even if you can pop in and say hi, meet. And so we can do that. Or, if we're in the office and, we're coming and having a few people that will go out to lunch and, show the person around and, take care of them. But it's defined all the way through that point.
Yes. Well, and, there's HR's part in onboarding, and then there's the client, wherever that person's going to go and work, there's that team's piece. And so that's another place that ownership could get mixed up or could break down, to make sure you understand how long do we have them at HR, what are we providing, and where are we handing off to the supervisor or the team, and they're going to take over and continue to provide those experiences. And Tamera, we've said this before, I know, a million times, but I'd love to say it a million more. We need different onboarding for our campus hires versus our experience hires. And sometimes with experienced hires, we think they don't need a whole lot of onboarding touches or it's going to go faster. I would say it's actually the reverse. We need to be sure we have that intentionality of understanding what do they need to learn, what do they need to know, and having that be, have you ever heard the term longboarding? Like not necessarily we're going to do that in the first week or the first 2 weeks. It's going to be a little more like 90 days or 180 days of experiences that continue to happen for that person, so they make the progress we need them to make.
We did an HR huddle on orientation is not onboarding. And I think I wrote a blog on it too. I think we've got some blogs on it too. But to your point, orientation is like this very short first few days. And then the longboarding or onboarding is 90, 180 days, for people really to get acclimated and independent and understand your firm's way of doing things. So,
yes. So we talked about things are moving fast in the market, and but some of these candidates that we're running into, they have multiple offers. They have other things that they're looking at. And so, how do you balance that as a recruiter to manage? You want to be sure things are moving. You don't want it to go too slowly, but then maybe the candidate is giving you signals that they need some more time or they want to do some thinking. So any thoughts on that, Tamera, about, like negotiating that with your candidates?
Well, and I think that's something to be transparent about right up front, and don't shy away from asking those questions. I think sometimes we shy away from asking those questions. Like, what is your timeline? Who else are you considering? What other, roles are you, looking at? And then sharing what your timeline is. And you might have, some timeline implications. Deadlines are coming up, or the holidays, or other things that are going to impact when that person would come on board. And so you'll have some ideal situations, or maybe there's some events, maybe you're doing a firm, retreat or a team retreat, and you want them to be on board for that. And so we've seen people negotiate, come to that event, ask for some time off, because you probably give a notice by then. And if you can't start before then, like that's part of what we do. But I think the message is we need to be really transparent and not shy away from asking those questions, find out what their timeline is. And we need to ask that every time we talk to them. Like we need to touch base. Has anything changed? What is your timeline looking like? Any updates you have for us? Is this still, working for you? What we agreed we're working towards. And I think that can help as well. And making sure we're communicating that then back out to the recruiting team, to your point, Renee, so that we can keep things moving. Because I know sometimes recruiters can be like, I am stalled. Like we have these people, but now we're stalled. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things that can happen to a recruiter is, we've invested this time, we've got somebody, we put them in front of the right people, but we're just not progressing it. And so if we can figure out how to keep that moving, maybe even, Renee, scheduling time on calendars to talk about candidates. Like if we're actively recruiting, maybe we get 30-minute huddles on so we can talk about it, so we can keep it moving, because we're busy with all the client work and, other demands that we might have. So.
Yeah, and some of the things we do, Tamera, on our team, sometimes when we are recruiting, we have not budgeted that time. When you don't really know necessarily when the candidates are going to come up and when you're going to get to that point. And so we are flexible. We'll say, I can talk to this person in the evening, this candidate. I can talk to you, Beth, as our lead recruiter, in the evening or on a Saturday morning if we need to keep, or early in the morning to keep these projects going so that she doesn't not have someone to come and give feedback to.
Right.
The other thought I had, Tamara, from a timeline perspective is, as a recruiter, sometimes you are getting, like you're making multiple hires, but they aren't necessarily syncing up. The internal team is forcing you to do like one this Monday and then one on Wednesday, and then one's coming in for orientation the Monday after. And so it's okay to say, this doesn't really make sense from a efficiency, effectiveness standpoint for me to have this be so start and stop. And so how can we line these up? And obviously we want to make the candidates happy. We want to make the teams happy, but we've got to strike a balance between our capacity and having time for all of these different initiatives. So I think it's fair to talk about the timing internally too, and make some requests. Could we do all of our starts on Monday mornings? And just say, once a week we're going to do that. We're not, it's going to be a very rare occasion that we're going to do a Thursday or a Friday.
And record some of that
for sure.
Stuff, and then meet. You know what I mean, Renee? I want you to listen to this for an hour, and then you and I are going to meet and talk about it and see what questions you have. Sure. And that way, I don't have to repeat it every single time. And so, and have it interactive and engaging, and all of those things. So.
Right. Short videos, Tamara. I want really short videos, I watch these 3 7-minute videos and then set up a meeting with me to talk about them.
Yes, exactly. I think that can help with that as well. Renee, I think there's an umbrella expectation that we haven't talked about in recruiting that we, have been speaking at conferences. We've been talking about in firm retreats. And that's one of the things is, have we defined what our firm's wow factors are? And we need to do that for clients. We need to do that for our team. We need to do that for recruiting. What are our key messages out there? And, what sets us apart? Why work for us? And it's not the list of the features and benefits and training and all of that stuff is great. And yes, you need to talk about all those things, but it's like, what's special about us? And then make sure we're messaging it. We're consistent about the message, and then we're living it. And it's probably tied to firm values a little bit also. If you looked at your firm values, some of that might point to, what's special or what your wow factor is. It could be something kind of, I'm going to use the word outlandish because I don't have a better word right now, but, we know a couple firms that say we only do 40-hour work weeks. You're like, that is not our wow factor. Okay, fine. What is yours? But like, really, what is it? We really embrace, hybrid and anytime, anywhere work, and we're not doing, forcing return to office. And this is how we're creating culture. And these are some of the things that we do in the office. And these are some of the ways we do huddles and how we've maybe revamped some of our, workspace. So we collaborate in the office so then we can work individually, maybe remotely or other places. And we have the technology, by the way, if I hire somebody in California and I'm in Minnesota, that we are able to create a great experience for that. So I don't know what it is, but that's something, if you have not talked about that, or you have not, visited, like what's special, unique, and different, or what are your wow factors in recruiting, that might be a great, team discussion, leadership, in a leadership meeting, not just the partners, because you do want to get perspective from your staff and your managers, what's special and unique, and, what are our values? And are we talking about that in our recruiting? And then are we living it? Are we managing against that? So that's the experience that our recruiter has. That's the experience our candidates have. That's the experience that we have in the recruiting team. Are we living it?
Yes. And Tamara, so a couple of things you said, maybe that sounds outlandish, but really the whole idea of wow factors is that they are truly something that has candidates step back and say, I think I might be willing to make a move to go there. I might be willing to try something new to go there because that is attractive.
I have an example. Can I give you an example real quick? It just popped into my head. So I was on a marketing call and with a group of firms, and we were talking about this team day. And they did this whole big team day, and they brought everybody in, and they just really created, like, we want to come together in this culture and all of these things. And I had some pictures up as I was looking at it, and I was on vacation the last 2 weeks, and my son, he's 16, he was looking over and he's like, where did those blue and white Nike tennis shoes come from? And I want a pair. And I said, well, then you have to go be an intern at that firm. He goes, okay, but I don't know how to intern, but I will go work there because I want the blue and white Nike tennis shoes. But like, they have this whole thing and this whole theme around it, and it catches people. It just catches people, and he's young and he's totally into, Nike tennis shoes. So that happened to catch him. Right. But there's something that grabs you. And when you said that, Renee, it just made me think about that. It grabs you almost like by your lapels and says, hey, this is something special about us that we do.
Yes, and so many cool examples out on social media. If you go look at, like pick some firms that are distinguishing themselves, maybe like best places to work in the Accounting Today magazine, or Inside Public Accounting just published their firms of the best firms, their list. And so maybe go grab that list and research some of those firms, their social media. Now, not all of them are going to be doing cool things, but if you dig around, or by the way, if you follow Convergence Coaching, we are following some of that stuff. We're highlighting it. And it's not, Tamera, it's the wow factor. And then it's where you are. It's how do I get people to know about my wow factor and experience it and have it draw them in. And so that's the combination of like the values and the thinking and then the marketing associated with it. And simple, by the way, you don't have to do a huge campaign. I think your young people could help you with this, and they could certainly help you understand what's wow and what's not. What's like
they for sure have opinions about that.
Yeah, if they're anything like my teenagers, they definitely love to tell me whenever I'm being not wow. So probably your young people could give you some of that feedback to firm leaders if you will open yourself up to it, to say, like, be honest with us. Does this sell or not?
Well, and I think that's a good point about, like, we should, be open to feedback. Your recruiter has feedback. They're in the trenches, and we need to listen to them. And we also need to listen to the experience, of our young people. We need to, maybe poll the people or check in and the recent hires and say, what did you like about it? What do you wish we didn't do? We really need to be open to feedback on this conversation. And I know the way I've done it for years is not the way we're doing it anymore. And we probably need to let go of some old norms that we have, or old expectations. It has shifted, and we need to shift along with it. And so make sure that we're open to that feedback. I think that's a really good point, Renee.
Awesome. Well, this has been an interesting discussion, Tamera, kind of walking around. We went in a bunch of different directions. Yes. We mentioned a couple of tools, which we'll link to in the session. Caroline will take care of that for us. And we thank everybody for listening. Tamera, thanks for being here to talk about recruiting.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. I appreciate it. We hope you all have a great week. Thank you so much. And we'll be off next week for Labor Day, but we'll see you in a couple weeks. So enjoy your holiday weekend. Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.